Reflection on Fieldwork Experience by Lizzie Arado for Education 476. In week 1 of my fieldwork, the first thing I really did was get to know all the students. I learned all of their names, their first names, try to make a really big effort to do that on the first few days, so they knew I was serious about being there, and they would see me as more of a teacher if I knew who they actually were. And I got to know my master teacher. And another thing I did was learn the routines and rules of the classroom, like when the students could get up out of their seats to use the restroom or to get a drink of water, or when homework was due, when it could be turned in late, what's the protocol on speaking out, for raising your hand or not raising your hand. So I learned those pretty quickly because it was good to understand how the classroom worked before I could help implement those rules. And I also learned a lot of valuable advice from my master teacher, such as you can't give the same type of assignments every day because students get really, really bored of those assignments. They lose interest, and it's important to switch it up. So do maybe anticipation guides and graphic organizer, or watch a video or do a presentation, just something different so it keeps their engagement. Mixing up how you give presentations, we use this app called Nearpod, which is an interactive kind of presentation experience, which the students really like. It keeps them pretty engaged. And then sometimes we just do oral presentations or just regular PowerPoints. And like I said before, my master teacher establishes classroom rules, which I got to know pretty well because they were already really implemented by the time I got there, which was the second week of school, but she established them in the first week of school, which gave her a little bit more authority as a classroom educator and a person who can implement those rules, and the students will follow them because they know that they're serious and they actually mean something in her classroom. By the second week, I was pretty established with the rules of the classroom, so much so that the students would come to me to ask if they could use the restroom, if they could turn in homework late. I would give them boundaries and they would follow them. They saw me as an authority figure at that point, so that was pretty nice to have that type of authority over them. I also learned that you really need to trust and respect students. Because many of the students in the classroom had trouble with this. A lot of them tended to act out, but not when the teacher was firm, or when the teacher gave them some slack. So if they were speaking out of turn, teacher would not overreact. She would just say, "Please don't do that." Being laid back about it, and then if they did it again, that's when she'd be firm and curt about it, and the students would know that she actually meant for them to stop what they're doing, to seriously stop what they're doing. So they would trust her enough to understand that that's what they really needed to do in the class. And I also learned that it's really important to personally engage with the students because it allows for more trust between the student and the teacher. Because if you're a teacher and you recognize their individual personalities and interests, they're more inclined to do what you want, not even because they may not necessarily like the content, but they just want to do it to please the teacher and achieve for the teacher. For week 3, I really focused on trial and error in the classrooms concerning activities and lesson planning. I tried to see what worked and what didn't work. In many of the classes, a lot of students tend not to finish their assignments, so it pushes the rest of the lessons back. So at one point, I kept getting behind on lessons because the students were working a lot slower than I had anticipated. So I thought, how do I combat this? How do I combat these slow learners? So at first I tried less work for assignments, but that didn't work because they were getting distracted, and they just didn't want to complete the work. So I figured that the students' reading and writing levels were low, which showed in their assessments from the years before, and they need to do assignments little by little and in a simplified form because it was hard for them to understand more in-depth vocab and concepts and concepts that went above and beyond just basic knowledge of the topics that we were talking about. So I learned that the kids needed to have a lot more advanced directions on what they needed to do, but give their directions little bits at a time. And I needed to add on activities to students that needed more of a challenge. So some students are really high and they kind of got bored with the activities that the students that were a little bit slower and a little lower academically needed to do. So I would give them more of a challenge. If they finished an assignment, I'd say, okay, well now think of it this way. How would you answer these questions, from a different perspective? And then they would do that. And I usually didn't get any complaints. They kind of enjoyed having that challenge of doing more for an assignment. In week 4, I really saw a conflict starting to happen with the students as they got more comfortable with each other, and that was that they could be really mean to each other. They called each other names, rude names, called each other dumb, actively pointed out things about their peers to the class so everyone would notice something specific about the peers. And I thought that was really rude of them to be doing. I mean, that can't be good for a student's self-esteem when one other student's pointing something out about them to the rest of the class. So I figured it was my job as a teacher to stop these attitudes and teach them how to respect one another and themselves. So at this point they respected me as a teacher because I was an authority figure, but it was really now about respecting each other and how I could do that. So I took to asking students that would say something mean. I would stop them and ask them very seriously why they felt the need to say that, why did they think it was inappropriate, and that they needed to say sorry. And a lot of times they realize that, okay, yes, maybe I should not have said that. It was rude of me to do that, but it helped curb. I mean, it didn't stop all of the negativity from these students, but it significantly curbed it, which I thought was good because they need to be positive role models for each other, and I need to see as a teacher that they can be responsible enough to be role models to each other as well. And lastly, in week 5, I really got to understand the classroom dynamics concerning how the students would turn in work, how would they actually complete their assignments in class, and at home, what kind of excuses would they make, how they would act in the classroom versus outside the classroom. So I just got a lot more accustomed to seeing their personalities both inside and outside the classroom environment. I also learned how to adapt to quickly changing lessons, because not all lessons go as you want them to, as they're planned. So it was really important, and especially for these learners who are typically a lot lower than some other classes, that you need to change a lesson quickly and productively to make it so that the students will get as much out of it as possible. They can learn as much as you need them to in that lesson, but you can still change the lesson within that goal to make it so the students understand everything to their full potential. And I learned that the students need a lot of personal attention. A lot of these students, since they are at low learning levels, they kind of get discouraged to finish their work and do really well when they don't understand it. So it takes a lot for the teacher to individually help those students understand concepts more in depth or just more clearly. And I think that's really good. I think students do need a lot of personal attention, but when 30 of the students need that from one teacher, it's really hard. So what I've learned is that I just need to, from the get-go, from the start, when I'm presenting a new topic or getting more in depth with it, that I need to be very specific. I need to have all the students' attention, well, most of the students' attention, as many as I can, to pay attention to that topic so that a lot of the confusion is eliminated. And I need to do repetition. Repetition is key for having these students understand concepts more thoroughly and at the basic level and at the more in-depth level.